Good morning. For this interview, I will be interviewing Dana Emsweiler. Dana Emsweiler works for Eaton Corporation. She's a value stream manager for various fabrication and circuit breaker production lines outside of our Beaver, Pennsylvania circuit breaker plant. Dana, thank you for joining me this morning.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to get right into this with our leadership questions here. So you work in an intense production environment
hmm
with a million different moving parts every single day. So the first question I would have for you is when your team is under pressure or behind schedule when it comes to production, what's your go-to strategy to keep everybody on track and balance those goals?
Yeah, that's a good question. You mentioned how I'm a value stream manager, so what we do at Beaver is we actually have them as like high performance work teams. So it's very similar to a value stream manager, but I did want to clarify that. I hope that's okay. But
Mhm.
essentially, like with that high performance work team lead, I have production supervisors, I have manufacturing engineers, quality technicians, supply chain, product engineers, all this whole team, along with the extended production team of about like 130 employees. So, and I would say anytime we're behind schedule, anytime things are under pressure, I very much try to just like have the team focus on the top item of the day. Like, what is our top issue? Can we solve that? Because I find that, and this is something that I do in my day to day too, is like if I have so many things that I want to do, I'm going to do like maybe the easier things, the things that I know I can get done, but it's not necessarily the high impact and high priority items. So with my team, I'm like, okay, like we have this quality issue or we have this safety issue. Let's focus on those and hopefully focusing on that will kind of cascade down to some of the other issues. But if I give them like this laundry list of things that we're behind on everything, we're going to be scattered. We're going to be disorganized. Someone's going to be going in one direction. Someone else is going to be going in another direction. And we're not going to come together unified. So I would say starting together and just working one issue at a time.
Hmm. That's a good answer. And in terms of setting priorities, like you kind of mentioned there, is that something you're doing based on your goals and your needs, or are you working cross-functionally with other team members to set priorities for your
Yeah.
high performance work team?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of cross functional. I will say, like, I try to be kind of that intersect between all of the functions that support my team of the fabrication and assembly lines. But I would say I also work with my counterparts who cover the other parts of the plant, as well as site leadership and that extended team to ensure that everything's aligned.
I see. Okay. And kind of piggybacking more on that, obviously in your role, you're communicating constantly with your team, with your colleagues and whatnot. And especially at the Beaver plant, I know that it is a very diverse workforce with a lot of different personality types. How are you balancing team input with the need to make timely decisions?
Yeah, no, it can be definitely tough because everyone might have another plan. And there are days where sometimes I come in and we have like a tier meeting structure. So you have like a tier one with operators or tier two with like the salary team, tier three with leadership. We also have functional tiers. And we go into a tier meeting and I might say at tier two, like, hey, this is the focus. Let's do it. And then at another tier meeting, they're like, no, this is the focus. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, yep, I go with it. But other times I'm like, no, like I told my team this is what we're focusing on. And we got to push back because if I keep changing, one, I feel like I look inconsistent and we already attacked this problem for the last 2 hours. We're going to finish it. So I would say it's a balance. Like sometimes I push back, but other times I'm like, nope, they have a point. Like there's a bigger goal ahead. But
Okay. And when you are making decisions, how do you ensure that people on your team feel heard or feel like they have some level of empowerment, even if their ideas are not necessarily being implemented because of a conflict with, like you said, somebody on the management team or some other factor that they might not be aware of?
yeah, I try to facilitate those conversations as much as possible as being like, it's not my call to make. Like, if it's a quality issue, like I go to the quality person. If it's a safety issue, I go to them. Like I try to be like, hey, like this is not my call, but if I have to step in, I will. And usually I notice like if I have a team member who doesn't agree or he feels like maybe like their manager is overriding them, I have a conversation with them afterwards alone and I'm just like, hey, like let's talk about that. I'm sorry if I miscommunicated that, but like let's align with your leadership and my leadership and make sure that we're all on the same page. But I would say a lot of times it's just like in the group setting, it's just facilitating those conversations. It's kind of just going with it. And then afterwards, it's having those like tie back one-on-ones and making sure that they're okay and they understand the decision.
Hmm. Okay. And the final question that I'd ask regarding general communication is tied into giving constructive feedback. It's something that we've talked about in this class, how leaders can provide effective feedback to their employees. How do you approach giving constructive feedback, especially when performance isn't meeting the expectations that you've set?
Exactly. For me, I think a lot of it is just having like very timely feedback sessions and making sure that I communicate feedback in all my one-on-ones. So with my direct reports, I typically meet with them bi-weekly, and my functional reports, it's a little bit more ad hoc. But I would say just being very open, not waiting until like 6 months or a year down the line and being like, hey, it's like a performance evaluation. You didn't do this. Like just being like much more like, hey, on Tuesday, how do you think that meeting went? And kind of leave it open to them and being like, well, I'm not sure. Like, I felt like things were a little wishy-washy or whatever the answer was. And then being like, can we work on that issue now instead of waiting for a month, 6 months down the line? Because I would never want to be blindsided with that feedback. So I try to give my team that same level of respect that I would want for myself.
I gotcha. Okay. And kind of on that same in that same vein, your lead, your role as a high performance work team lead, you have many different types of functions that are kind of reporting in under your umbrella, or at least that you're working with. And I'm sure you have employees that are career motivated that want to think about the next opportunity, and you probably have people that are very comfortable in their current roles. What's your philosophy on developing members for your team for their current roles and also for their next endeavors that they may be seeking with the organization?
Exactly. So much of it's just meeting the employees where they are. I have one employee that is going back to college and working towards her associates and then eventually her bachelor's. And it was a lot of just like providing that encouragement and support and resources to looking online, what programs exist, making sure she knew where to find the Eaton funding and things like that. And then I have another employee that it was looking at Eton University courses and seeing like where we could potentially look at just some additional skills. And sometimes it's linking someone up with a stretch assignment or special project, nominating them for a team at the plant or at the division level. So I would say just meeting them where they are. And yes, like you said, there are some employees that are very happy on where they're at and other ones that are like, yeah, like I'm hoping to have something new in the next year or two. So I would say it's just being very customized with that approach and
Mm.
knowing that not everyone's on that same journey.
That's good to hear because one of the concepts we talk about in this class is how leadership is so situational. It's going to be different for every single person. And a lot of times we talk about being fair, being equitable as a leader, but at the end of the day, you have to customize your approach for every
Mhm.
single employee that you have.
Yeah.
Another course concept we've explored is motivation theory and what actually motivates employees and to perform. And one of the motivation theories we talk about is recognizing performance with rewards. So, which systems do you have in place to recognize and reward strong performances for employees on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, we have our like performance evaluation cycle, our merit that you're familiar with.
Hmm.
So that's kind of, once a year. At a more like localized level, we have kind of our play to win program where I actually serve as the Beaver site lead for play to win at the division. So, and we recognize people with bots coins, which for Beaver, it's called Beaver on the spot. And you get various coins and for doing something good. And typically it's at the operator level, but salary team members can get and give them too. And they can then redeem them for lunch tickets, for Eaton merchandise. You can stack them for E-Stars, which leads me to the next point. E-Stars is a huge incentive program that we have at Eaton, and I love this program because you can shout out employees, managers can provide points, um, individual contributors can just provide thank yous, which aren't worth points, but your manager still gets to see them and understand kind of the good you're doing. And then if you do have points, those can stack for gift cards or various other merchandise that the eStar store sells. So I think we all love the eStar program too. So
That's awesome. Moving into accountability and adaptability. Obviously, accountability is something that we talk a lot about at Eaton. It's one of our leadership attributes that we've been familiar with for a handful of years. But in your position, as a leader of people and a leader of a lot of people, you are responsible for making decisions that not only affect you but affect your team. And I'm sure you made decisions that you maybe regret or wish you could have changed. So, kind of building off that, how do you handle mistakes that you made as a leader, for you and for your team, and what do you do to rectify that?
Yeah, I would say like it's going to happen and like being honest and knowing that like leadership is so unique and like leading employees is a very like customized tailored approach. And I would say, yeah, sometimes you mess up. And my big thing is like trying to fix it and like working with that employee in their one-on-one and being like, hey, like what do you need from me? How can I best support you? Because not all of my direct reports need the same level of leadership, the same level of like hands-on. So just trying to meet them where they are again. And then if I do kind of mess up and I don't lead them or support them the way they need to be and I want to help them, then just being like, okay, like going forward, here's what I'm going to do to change and here's the expectation and like, and then checking in with them at the next one-on-one and being like, hey, like, am I doing better? Is there still more you need? So I think it helps and then just kind of building that foundation of trust that you're trying to make your leadership style work for them.
Hmm. And yeah, so kind of building off of that, how would you describe your leadership style? I mean, you mentioned that it's customized, but generally speaking, would you say you're taking a more passive role, or are you taking a relationship oriented approach, or are you pretty active? Like, how would you describe how you lead on a day to day?
Say as a whole, very relationship oriented, being
Okay.
able to build those connections and leverage those. So, and, but just, yeah, ultimately, I would say being very adaptive and agile based on what the employee and I identify that we need.
Yeah, I gotcha. And that's something we discussed in class was relationship oriented leaders, and how kind of exactly what you just said, the focus is creating positive work relationships. Obviously that helps you get what you want. It helps you lead them, but also makes employees feel that they have a sense of empowerment, and respect for the organization that they're, a part of. So getting to some of the last questions I have here relating to vision and culture. What type of team culture are you intentionally trying to build within your umbrella of people?
Yeah, I would definitely say like a very positive, very active problem solving culture, being able to be like, okay, like we are empowered to take ownership. We don't need myself or another manager to be like, hey, like this is what you're gonna do today. Like I don't like to micromanage. So I would say like having employees that are like, I am in it to win it, I'm taking that ownership. And some employees are like, yep, I'm all in for that. And other employees, that's not how they like to be led. So trying to see like, but developing them to get to that point, to take more ownership and be empowered to lead those problem solving activities and taking the initiative to see an issue and just kind of go for it and fix it and find a solution.
I gotcha. And when you have an employee who is maybe in conflict with that culture you're trying to set or isn't meeting the expectations that you're setting, how are you handling discipline for those types of employees?
Yeah, it can be tough for sure. Those are very tough conversations to have. But I would say talking to the employees and being like, hey, this is my expectation and this is what we're striving towards. How can I help get you there? And that's not always an easy thing because they'll be like, push back and be like, hey, maybe that's not my job or I don't think that's my job. But I would say being like, hey, like this is my expectation. Maybe that wasn't the expectation before, but now it is. And how can we work to get to that point?
Yeah, I see. Okay. And the final question I have for you is, if someone new joined your team tomorrow, what do you think they would immediately notice about how you lead?
hmm I think that they would notice that I have a lot of energy and a lot of passion, and it can be very strong, but I always try to like work with that employee one on one when I have a new employee to be like, hey, like let's make an onboarding plan, let's look at what you need to do in the next month, 2 months, making sure you're meeting a lot of people. But I would say they would see that I have a lot of energy, but they would also know that I'm working with them one on one in more of like a quieter sense to ensure that they are fully onboarded and trained to the way that we need them to be.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate all of your responses. Very insightful. I know you have a unique role at the Beaver plant, and an important one for our organization. So it's great to hear that, your methods are effective in leading, and I'm sure you've learned a lot along the way. So I appreciate your responses.